question, feel free to pop it in there a second time. There will be a release coming out, I would say probably within the next 45 minutes, that details some of the start dates, other just real basics and fundamentals that go along with what we received today. That'll be more of a guide if anything else. But Mark, I'm sure will answer the majority of your questions first. So Mark, whenever you're ready, if you'd like to go ahead and just kind of start things off, and we'll go from there.
Good afternoon. Appreciate everybody jumping on and joining us here. Tremendously excited today for the opportunity that our winter kids are going to have as early as next week, Monday. We absolutely want to recognize the work and support here from Governor Whitmer and her staff and everyone in her office, along with MDHHS Director Hertel, her staff, everyone from her office. We are greatly appreciative of them taking the information, receiving the data that we've communicated over the last week to 10 days, and are incredibly pleased and grateful with the new order that goes into effect on Monday, so our winter kids can all move forward. We just met with our board this afternoon. The start of practice in games for basketball and ice hockey, we're going to allow those to begin next Monday. We wanted to give schools as much flexibility as possible in terms of scheduling. Don't forget our winter kids in those 4 contact sports have really kind of been in limbo and on pause for the last 2.5 months. And we have said consistently that when we were ready to play, we would play. And so we're excited about those sports beginning early next week. Competitive cheer and wrestling, they will have their start dates, will be competition as of next Friday, which is the 12th of February. So the first competitive cheer and wrestling meets could happen potentially for the first time next weekend. The tournament dates, and these will all be part of our release, but the tournament dates that we had set back a few weeks, those are all remaining in place. We've got our competitive cheer and our ice hockey tournaments concluding on the weekend of March the 27th. That's the Saturday. Wrestling will conclude on the weekend of April 2 and 3. And then last but not least, our basketball tournament, which this will run together this year. So district week, it will be girls district games on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Boys district week, they will play on Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. The following week, you've got girls and boys regionals, and everything finishing up that first full week of April, to where our girls finals will be on Friday, April 10th, and the boys finals on Saturday, April the 10th, the following day. So the 9th for girls and the 10th for boys. So the end point had been set now for a number of days. We finally now have our start date that can get rolling for all 4 of these sports early next week. And again, we're incredibly excited and we're ready to go. As excited as we were to get fall restarted, to be able to finish, we're probably more excited because really these 4 winter teams, it's really been hard on kids and coaches and families and communities, and incredibly grateful for next week. I do want to talk just briefly about the masking requirements. What is in the order is that it is clear that in the sports such as basketball and ice hockey, that face masks have to be worn at all times. That's practices, that's games. With the new order that wearing a mask during both practice and competition is a clear requirement. Wrestling is being treated differently under the orders. From what we've been told is that in the guidance documents that MDHHS is going to be putting out, that wrestling will be required to do rapid testing on the day of meets. So if a wrestling school, for example, has a meet on a Thursday during the season, all of those individuals participating in that afternoon or that evening would need to have a negative rapid test on the day of the meet. So whether that's done first thing in the morning, whether that's done just after school during the lunch period, wherever that may be, there is a requirement in wrestling that a rapid test has to be done. which is really, when you take a step back, I think all of us have thought that, wrestling in terms of the winter sports had some very unique challenges when it came to COVID and keeping everybody as safe as possible. So again, MDHHS, similar to what they did in the pilot testing program, they will be providing those tests to the schools at no charge to the schools. And instead of the pilot program, which we required 3 tests a week, this will all be predicated on the number of days of competition a wrestling team has in a week. So for this season, our high school teams can compete either once or twice a week. So when you have 1 meet during a week, you'll be testing once. And when you've got 2 meets in a week, you will be testing twice. We also got some further clarification on masks for competitive cheer, which is a little bit unique because, of course, with cheer, it's more of a performance sport. And unlike the other 3 contact sports in cheer, you're never in close proximity with an opponent. When you're out there on the competition surface, you're there with your teammates and teammates only. And so we've got some additional guidance for our cheer young women for both practice and game situations. There is a lot more details coming. If you read the order, there's many places where they reference the MDHHS guidance on masks and testing that will be issued by, I believe it's Sunday, February the 7th. So as we get more details later today, tomorrow, and over the weekend, that we will be communicating those with schools as soon as we have them. But just to kind of sum up before we go to your questions, we are grateful again to the governor's office and to Director Hertel with MDHHS. Our kids, coaches, families, and communities are beyond excited, and we are ready to go fully to get started on Monday. And again, our goal going back to June has been 3 seasons that all reached the finish line. 1 has been completed. We now have the full go to get season number 2 started with those finish line dates in the horizon, and then we'll finish strong here with spring. So that's the quick summary. And with that, let me turn it back to Jeff or Andy here, and we'll work through your questions.
Mark, first number of questions here are asking for a little bit more clarity on what we know about masking. For example, will this be required for any of the non-contact sports? Swimming has been asked a couple of times. Also, just to clarify again, what we're doing for competitive cheer when it comes to masking.
So no changes to the 4 other winter sports that are fully going. Ski obviously being outdoors, boys swimming and diving in the Lower Peninsula, UP swimming and diving, bowling, and gymnastics. There's no change whatsoever to those 4 non-contact sports, that you are masked at all times except when you are involved in direct participation. So again, no change whatsoever. Today's order only dealt with the changes to the contact sports. When it comes to cheer, cheer will have to have a face mask on during all times during practice and competition, except when they are in active participation on the mat. The reason again for this is there is no opponent that is ever within any kind of physical distance, much less actual physical contact. That competitive cheer, you are cheering within your own teammates, as I said earlier. So again, they're going to be masked at all times during practices. So during practice, the times that the mask can come off is when the young women are stunting and tumbling. Those are the most high-risk activities, to where when someone is trying to land from a tumbling routine or from a stunt, either landing or being caught, and if the mask could move, that could create a real safety issue. So we've been able to find a carve-out for competitive cheer where they're going to be able to compete. They're going to be able to move forward in the masking requirements, again, without an opponent, without any physical contact with others, is really going to be done in a safe way. So that's the quick summary on our other winter sports that are already going, plus the 4 sports covered today in the new order.
Kind of along those lines, we were asked, and I'm not quite sure if this is a question for us or more for the health department, but how is it determined which sports will need masks and which sports will not?
So MDHHS, and I think if you go to their FAQ page that's posted right now, they have a list of what they consider to be contact sports. And the 3 that are listed that we sponsor are basketball, it's ice hockey, and it's wrestling. In conversations, it is clear that some of the challenges and concerns with wrestling are different than what they are in both basketball and ice hockey. So that's why the requirement is going to be in place here for wrestling, that testing is going to be required. And by the way, with testing being required for wrestling, it's going to allow those kids during their matches to compete without a mask on. Wrestling, where you already have certain airway and choking issues based on certain holds in certain positions, trying to compete in wrestling with a mask on would just make the potential risks even greater. So wrestling will test and they will be able to compete without masks. Right now in basketball and ice hockey, they're able to compete as early as next week, as long as masks are worn and no testing requirement.
Sounds like my mic is being a little funky, so I apologize if you can't understand me. I'll repeat. But where are we at in terms of masking for officials? Is that something that might be required?
So right now, the masking requirements that we've really focused on have really dealt with the participants, with players. One thing that we're working through the order, because we saw the order today for the first time at 1:30, the actual order itself. We're right now figuring out exactly where officials will fall in that order. Certainly, we're going to need to decide. Obviously, a competitive cheer judge and a gymnastics judge is in a different position as an official than what a basketball official or a wrestling official does, or an ice hockey official who is obviously much more active during the game. So we should have that updated guidance and information for officials here, hopefully by the end of the day tomorrow.
For wrestling, can testing happen the day before a meet or instead of the day of? And along those lines as well, will rapid testing be required for teams traveling long distances across state lines, things like that?
We have not gotten any information from HHS that given a distance or out of state that additional or extra testing would be required. So that has not been mentioned, that has not been discussed in any way, shape, or form about that kind of testing. Jeff, the first part of that question again?
I believe it was if wrestlers would be able to test the day before competition, or does it have to be the day of?
So the guidance, again, we're waiting on that document that MDHHS has stated will be published in public on Sunday, on February the 7th. That is one question we did have. Obviously, with wrestling, we are using exclusively home weigh-ins this year. We've used that in past years as an option. All wrestlers weigh in the day before the meet. It would make a great deal of sense if the home weigh-in is the day before, that testing would also happen the day before. But again, we're going to look to that updated guidance on Sunday from Health and Human Services to see if they're going to stick to their it has to be day of competition, or if they would extend that to also include the day before.
A couple of people asked this question in wrestling. If there is a single positive test, will that require the entire team to withdraw or be disqualified, or just the athlete who tests positive?
So that answer would be the same as it's been with all of our fall sports. If you have a positive case or a positive test, you then go back and you work through the close contact and contact tracing process. In some cases, that might quarantine or eliminate an entire team. In other cases, it may be only a handful of individuals. So each one of those, whenever there's a positive test, you work your way backwards over the previous 48 hours. That will be handled no differently than it has so far.
And will wrestlers need to be masked during practices?
So the way that we understand what the order requires is that masks will be required during practice situations and settings, that with the test, the mask comes off during their active participation in a match.
Just a question, and I can clarify this. Will games be able to start Monday for basketball and hockey? The answer to that is yes. Yep. Wrestling and cheer will be on the 12th.
Correct. We have a lot of schools that won't be playing on Monday or Tuesday. That's going to be their local decision with local control. But given the fact that each day that's gone by, especially as we've gotten into February, that's with each day that goes by, that runway for winter sports gets shorter and shorter. What we've heard from all of our winter coaches is that our kids have never been in better condition. with all the conditioning that has gone on the last 3 weeks, we've had a few wrestlers even joke that it's felt like cross-country practice the last 3 weeks as much as they've been running. So I don't think our kids have ever been in better shape, which will allow us to make a very quick transition to contact competition and contact practices right away next week.
Currently, basketball teams can play 3 games in a week, Monday through Sunday. Has there been any talk of allowing basketball teams to play 2 games in one day to make up for lost games?
So right now, if with starting next week, basketball has 6 weeks of regular season play before the district even starts. So if a team can maximize their number of games in a week, that's 18 games. Remember that we're also giving our basketball teams over the remaining 3 weeks of the tournament that once they're eliminated or beaten in the district or regional level, they're able to play those last 2 regular season games all the way up until the day of the final. So we are staying with the 3 game per week limitation in basketball. And as I said, as we sit here today with the start of competition next week, before district week gets here, a basketball team could play 18 of their 20 allowable regular season games. And don't forget, our football kids during the fall, they were only able to get in 6 regular season games. So truth be told, we're actually quite pleased with what we're able to give our basketball kids.
How much do we know about protocols for spectators, both in terms of how many will be allowed, what they'll be allowed to do?
We're waiting on clarification. If you read the order, you see 3 different numbers of 100, 250, and 500, all for, arenas, recreational facilities. So there's 3 different levels depending on capacity. The thing that gives us pause that we have to get clarified is that if you saw the press conference today, Director Hertel said that spectators would be limited to 2 per participant, which that's just different language than what's in the order. So we just need to make sure exactly what the order will allow before next Monday as it comes to spectators.
Do we have anything we can pass on at this point about venues, especially during the later rounds for winter tournaments?
So we have had conversations with the Breslin Center. We believe that both our boys and girls finals will be able to be held at Breslin. Ice hockey, we're having those conversations with USA Hockey Arena to see where those dates could work out. The same has gone on with competitive cheer, where those finals will be held. And then obviously we've got to do a lot of the legwork yet with wrestling to see if we're going to have to split each of our finals at different locations. If we would do 2 divisions on one day, the other 2 divisions on the other day. So that's our plan, at least right now, but especially when it comes to our wrestling sites, stay tuned.
Just to stick with the spectator ones that just came in, would the 2 per person, if that does end up being what it is, include coaches, other participants like it did for fall, and media accesses at games, I'm assuming would be unlimited?
Correct. Same as the fall. So 2 spectators per participant would include players. We've also included coaches in that, and obviously with limited spectators, it's never been more important for media to be able to be there to cover events, and so there'd be no change to the media policies.
Will athletes that technically violated the limited team membership rule up until February 8th be given a free pass, or will they face potential suspensions?
So we'll deal with those on a case-by-case basis, just as we do with any other kind of violation.
Have we had any schools opt out of competition so far?
None that I am aware of.
How much did the change in directorship at MDHHS allow this path to change, or anything else that way?
I'm not sure. You could ask that same question about, the rally last weekend. And my whole focus, and I try and live my life by the windshield and rear view mirror proportions. I think it's really important that you try and always look forward about the size of your front windshield, and you look backwards about the size of what your rear view mirror is. So I think what's really important is we're going to get a chance to get these 4 sports all started next week. And that is what we are looking forward to. And we're just, we're grateful of everybody that allowed their voice to be heard. We're grateful of the consideration of the data and the numbers that we provided. And again, very grateful to Governor Whitmer, Director Hertel, and all of their staff members with today's announcement.
Can you talk at all about how the pandemic has impacted the MHSAA financially?
So we're hanging in there. Certainly much of our revenue in a normal year is around ticket revenue at our tournament events. And whenever you're limiting spectators, that creates some real challenges. So we've had to be very creative, even with limited crowds during the fall. We actually did very well as we could have hoped. That our schools really came through for us. We reimbursed all of our fall tournament sites for all of their officials' fees, and any remaining revenue did come from us. So that is why we've been able to continue advocating for all of our seasons. We'll figure out a way to get winter tournaments in place and done, and we'll do the same with spring. So we appreciate those that may be concerned. Again, as a private, not-for-profit organization, all of our money is generated through sponsorships, ticket sales, those kinds of things. We receive no tax dollars, and so we'll just continue to be very creative in these strange times.
Obviously, we did a lot more with live streaming because of the spectator limits during the fall. Will those rules be similar for the winter?
That is the plan, yes.
A couple spring sport questions. Do we anticipate that they'll be pushed back at all because of the delay? And does the return of winter sports make us confident for an uninterrupted spring season?
I've always had high confidence in spring based on our experience this fall. Fall sports, the way they were able to go forward, with most of them being outdoors. You then even put that into the spring to where our crowds, groups, and gatherings are the smallest they've been. So very high confidence that we'll be able to do spring, hopefully without any further delay or interruption. We are going to get feedback from our schools early next week. Now that we know our winter start date and end dates, there's more overlap than ever has been there. So we do want to see from our schools, would there be a delay of just a handful of days to spring sport first day of practice? I think that's important feedback to get. Schools are now going to be managing indoor facilities with more overlap of winter and spring. So we're going to get some feedback from our schools and see, but spring sport practices will begin in March. It's just a matter of will it be the 15th or will it be a few more days later, just to best thread that needle for both winter and spring.
Just another quick spring question. Are there any sports that are classified as contact sports for the spring?
I would think the only contact sport would be boys lacrosse currently of all of our spring offerings, and also girls soccer. Those I believe would currently be the two.
Are we, and I guess we stick with spring here until we get through these, but are we flexible with possibly moving spring sports back a week or two should the state have to take another pause before winter sports are completed?
We would keep, if there is, just as we did with fall, just as we did with winter, if there's a pause, a delay, a stop, we go back to see how we can have 3 seasons that all get to the finish line, and we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Is there a concern over an officials shortage, potentially, if officials double up like they did during football?
So there's always a need for more officials. That doesn't go away during a pandemic, and is probably even a little bit more important. Schools, I know, are going to be creative with their scheduling. It may be a case of schools are going to do a doubleheader basketball game, for example, and maybe using the same crew of officials for both games. It may be a case in some parts of our state where 3-person was being used for regular season, and some games may end up going back to use only 2 officials. So we're right now working on how we're going to make the officiating puzzle fit once it gets to our tournament time. But we've got assigners and schools right now that are working real hard to finalize those schedules and to make all that work.
A couple wrestling questions. First, a quick one. With wrestling and cheer starting competition next Friday, do they start practices with contact on Monday as well?
That's correct, yes.
And then will you just reread the dates for the wrestling tournaments, the finals, because team and individual are separate still?
Yep. So with wrestling, District week is going to be the week of March. It would be, well, the dates are this. So team districts are going to be on March 17 and 18, with the individual district that Saturday on March 20. The following week, team regionals would be March 24th, with the individual regionals being that Saturday, March 27th. Our team finals will actually be held on a weekday. Tuesday, March 30th will be our team finals on that Tuesday, and then with the individual finals to take place on Friday and Saturday. I believe those dates are April 2 and 3. We don't know what our wrestling venues will be. Very likely scenario could be that when it gets to the finals, that each of our 4 divisions could be at separate sites. Could be a case of 2 divisions are at one site. That is still yet to be determined.
Also with wrestling, are there protocols we are considering regarding mats? For example, will they be required to be cleaned between weight classes?
Might not be between weight classes. I don't know how many matches. I do know that those of you who have covered our wrestling finals for years, we've actually been disinfecting mats using a product with infrared light. We're able to do that very, very quickly. We're able to do that without having to take the mop bucket and wet mats down and those kinds of things. So we do have some very creative ways that we can help our wrestling schools to keep everybody as safe as we possibly can.
These 2 questions are related, so I'll read them together. How concerned are you about the possibility of a pause to winter sports? And is there a threshold that we've been told of in terms of case numbers that we have to keep in order to ensure that they continue to be active?
So I think you always have that concern. I think as we've looked at all levels of sport over the last 10 months, that positive cases and an outbreak is a concern. I think if you asked Roger Goodell, does he still have a concern prior to Sunday's game? His answer would probably be yes. So that really doesn't go away. What does give me great confidence, and you've heard us talk about this for a number of weeks, is the experience of this winter in our 3 neighboring states. In Wisconsin, Indiana, and Ohio, they have all been able to participate in all of their winter sports, contact sports included, and their overall COVID numbers have decreased at about the same general rate as what ours have in Michigan, both in terms of new daily cases as well as positive test rates. So yes, we're certainly concerned. We know that we're going to have positive cases, just as we did in the fall, that we'll work with schools to manage those to keep everybody safe. But the experience that I hear over and over from my colleagues in the other 38 states that have been playing winter sports now for a number of weeks, specifically our 3 neighboring states, I believe all we needed was the chance to get started. And hopefully here, the next time we'll see everybody face to face, we'll be covering one of our winter final events.
Just a couple more here, and we'll be finishing things up. The first, can basketball and hockey, can you explain, Mark, a little bit about how basketball and hockey will be able to both start contact on Monday and begin playing on Monday if those schools choose to do so?
Yep, so Monday is the first day that the new order goes into effect. So I think I saw a question or 2 come in. Well, can schools have contact practices tonight or over the weekend? And the answer is no. That does not start until Monday. And in basketball and ice hockey, that same date of next Monday is the first date that contact practices may begin. And then they're also would be able to start, the first allowable day of competition would also be next Monday. We have a lot of girls teams that I think are going to be ready to go early on next week. Remember, they had a full week of practice back in November. They've probably finalized their squads and made cuts if they had to. Remember that our boys teams haven't even had been able to go with contact practices. Maybe not as big of an issue at the varsity level, but you're at a large school to where you have 40 boys that try out for the freshman basketball team. It's awfully hard to finalize your squad and make cuts when you haven't yet seen kids have a full-out inter-squad scrimmage. So our boys teams, you may see girls playing games early in the week next week with probably our boys basketball teams probably getting started middle or late next week. And, of course, in the hockey world, so much of it is predicated on ice time because, of course, this order just didn't open up high school sports. It also opened up all levels of youth and amateur sports. So our high school teams next week are going to be competing with non-school hockey for ice time, and that's why we wanted to give our hockey schools lots of flexibility too.
Who will be responsible for policing the wearing of masks during competition?
That would be, as we did during the fall, it's really a partnership between school administrators, coaches, and officials. And we know that from the fall experience, we need to stay diligent. There's a lot of work to do, and we will do everything we possibly can to make sure that everybody is following the Health and Human Services order.
Are the tests the same as football teams and other fall sports we're taking? And if a basketball player doesn't want to wear a mask during competition, for example, can they voluntarily take the tests instead?
So the answer to the question is yes. The MDHHS will be providing the same antigen testing that they did for use during the pilot program. One of the unanswered questions is, for a team, does it have to be all or nothing? If one individual on a team wants to get out of wearing a mask and wants to do the rapid test, is that acceptable? Is it all or nothing? Can it be individual? Do the two teams playing, if one team or one individual has tested and opted out of the mask, does that now require everyone? Again, we understand that this will be one of the questions that's addressed in the guidance that'll be coming out this weekend.
And it looks like the last question we're going to have time to ask: will basketball seasons continue with the previous schedules provided by individual conferences, or how will games would be rescheduled going forward?
What we're hearing, what most schools are going to do is they're going to pick up with their schedules next week, and they're going to start with that to try and not to reschedule as many games as possible. So they'll pick up next week, and over those 6 weeks of regular season, they'll see what's already been set and confirmed, and then I'm sure they'll work back to maybe add some third games during a week to try and get in as many regular season games as possible.
Anything else, Mark, you want to mention before we let you go? Mark has another thing to do at 4, and I'll obviously be available if there are further questions.
Nope. Jeff, anything else for me?
Will there be junior high games? Yes.
So junior highs and middle schools that wish to start in these 4 sports, we don't have any middle school hockey teams that I'm aware of. But basketball, competitive cheer, and wrestling, junior high, middle school, if they want to get started, they would need to follow these same guidelines, and that would mean junior high, middle school wrestling. Those kids would have to be tested the day of the meet.
Gotcha. All right, we're gonna let Mark go. Keep an eye on your email for a release from us that includes all of these dates and some other pertinent information. Obviously, we'll have questions that we'll be answering here moving forward. But thank you, everybody, for being here. And if you need a recording of this, shoot me an email, and I can send you a link to download that as well.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate your time as always.